Yo, it's cracking, everybody. Give it a little bit for some people to hop on here, but I figured I'd just hop on and do a little birthday stream. Nothing too specific, but happy to answer questions if you guys have any questions. If you want to look at any film too, we could maybe do a little technique analysis type stuff. But thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, 31 years old today, so it's just amazing how fast time goes, you know. I remember going into high school, I remember graduating high school, and it's like, boom, 10 years go by like that. But still sprinting, still training, so I think should be a reminder to people that, you know, you don't have to, just because you're out of school, doesn't mean you have to stop doing what you enjoy. If you like sprinting, if you like training, if you like powerlifting, if you like playing volleyball, you know, whatever it is that you like to do, there's no reason to stop after college as long as you have the time to do it and you kind of build your life in a way that, with your job and family requirements and all that, that allows you to do what you like to do. You might as well keep doing it, you know. Let's see. Training for walk-on tryouts. So I would say for football, you know, obviously acceleration is going to be key. It really depends on what your position is, whether you're going to need to incorporate more speed development work or just do acceleration-oriented training. But in the short term, if you want to improve your 40 time, it's really going to come from honing your technique. You know, there's not much you can do to run faster in a very short period of time. So if you're playing linebacker, then acceleration is going to be key. Lateral movement is going to be key because, you know, as you're reading what's going on in the backfield or seeing what the quarterback's doing or anything like that, you got to be good with your lateral movement. So I'd definitely be working on that. But as far as getting onto the team and having a good 40 time, I'd be looking at, you know, what's happening in the first few steps of your acceleration. Are you able to launch out at a good posture? Be able to attack back at the ground, you know, have good negative foot speed where your foot is coming back to the ground to send you out. A lot of people, when they run a 40, they just try to sort of set their foot out in front of them. They smash into the ground, and they're sort of catching themselves until they're upright, and then they start sprinting. So I'd be looking at, you know, being aggressive with your arms, making sure you're striking back, attacking under your hip, so that way you can start on a good note for your 40. Because once you're going, you know, you'll just sprint pretty normally and it'll be what it is. But in the 40, the start is going to be really important. So I'd be looking at, you know, how's your ground contacts in those first few steps and start with that. I appreciate all the birthday wishes, guys. See, we got a lot of OG viewers in here. Got Mr. Reynolds. We got Elijah. I appreciate you guys. You know, it's kind of funny. I posted that shorts video today on YouTube. And in like 30 minutes, it had 20,000 views. I was like, whoa, man. Like, this algorithm's really kicking in. So maybe I need to do more of those. Yeah, no problem, Tiger Blood. Yeah, America. Got it. I'm repping America. Awesome, man. I'm glad that's been working for you. Yeah, it's one of those, it's just a simple thing that you can, if you tend to overstride, then going to the sort of opposite end of the spectrum with keeping that knee really closed makes it pretty easy to then strike back at the ground. And then over time, you don't necessarily have to keep thinking about that cue, but as you get used to the feeling, then that feeling will just become what you do naturally, and then you won't have to worry about it anymore. But a lot of people, I find, they try to either drive the knee too far or they try to reach out in front of them. And in the first few steps, it's really, you can make a huge difference in your ultimate acceleration or your, you know, what top speed you reach, how fast you get there and all that, if those first few steps are good. Because if as you push out and you've accelerated your mass, you know, your body across the ground, and you're able to then hit the ground again with a nice propulsive force production at the right time, then you're going to be like boom, boom, boom. You're going to accelerate each step. Whereas if you reach out in front or crash, you're going to accelerate then you're going to hit the ground, crash, slow down, have to overcome that, and then push off again. And so I think when you keep that knee kind of closed in the first couple steps, it allows you to be very propulsive and not have any braking forces in those first few steps, and it really sets you off on a good note. Where's my water at? Oh. I tell you what, when I do live streams, talking, I don't know what it is, but it just fries my throat. I guess it's the I guess I don't talk that much in my normal day-to-day life until I do a live stream or make a video. So I gotta have my 40 ouncer on hand just for that. Let's see. Yesterday I actually ran pretty well. I did some speed endurance work. I did 4 by 70 meters, but usually when I do a workout like that, my first one is kind of a warm up, and so the last 3 are really what I focus on. If I'm doing 4 by 70, I'm really focusing on the last 3, and I was able to hit 0.93 over a 10-meter split. I think I hit 193 and 194 for 20-meter splits. So the speed's starting to come back. You know, after I got sick, and then I had the arm issue, and just a few different things that, you know, kind of took a while to get my speed back, but I'm starting to see that, so I'm happy about that. Yeah, so I am still coaching at Arcadia right now. In fact, just before this, I was out there with some of the guys and gals doing some strength training, and it was a pretty successful year, I would say. I think we had more state qualifiers than. Let me backtrack a bit. There's 2 head coaches. I'm the boys' head coach, and then our other head coach is the girls' head coach. But really, we break it up by event. So I handle sprints, jumps, hurdles. He handles distance. He does high jump. And, you know, if one of us needs help, obviously we'll help each other out. But so he's been there longer than me. And since the time that he's been there, this year was the most state qualifiers that we've ever had. So that was cool. Our girls' team definitely did better than the guys' team. Like, I had a 300-meter hurdler. She did well. I had a triple jumper. She did well. Good high jumper. We had a good 100-meter runner on the girls' side. On the guys' side, I think we have a better chance this year because, for example, our best 100-meter sprinter, he went from 12.3 or 12.4 down to 11.4. So to see that big of a jump in his junior year shows that he's got a lot of potential. So I think a lot with the guys, part of it is, you know, we had a really young team, so most of our guys were freshmen and sophomores. So it takes time in high school to really just grow into yourself as an athlete, to learn what it's like to move properly, what it's like to go through proper sprint training. And so it takes a little time for that to kick in and to see the effects. Whereas I think girls tend to mature a little earlier, so it's easier to see really good performances when they're sophomores or juniors, whereas the guys, you're going to see better performances as they become juniors and seniors. And so I'm hoping that this year we can, you know, see both sides of the team kind of do better. But we had a lot of improvement, and really that's what I focus on. You know, if you're at a big school, you have a lot of people, maybe it's known for your sport, and you come into the program and boom, all of a sudden we have all these state qualifiers. Well, that's great, but that doesn't tell me how good of a coach I am. You know, if someone comes to me and they're really gifted and they do well, I can't really say that was because of my coaching, you know what I mean? So I'm focused more on seeing the progression, and what I'm seeing in the guys who have been training over the summer and who have been, like, they really got motivated by this year because they saw that, oh, I actually can improve when I'm in a good program. I'm starting to see some really good improvements in them, so I'm excited to see how it goes. We did get bumped down to Division 3, so we were Division 2. Division 1 is the biggest division in Arizona. Some states it's opposite, where the higher number is a bigger division, but we got bumped to D3, so the standards are a little easier to make. And I think, personally as an athlete, if I see a standard like, say, for USA Championships, and it says I got to run 10.1 to qualify, well, that's not very motivating, because how am I going to run 10.1? You know, I mean, that if it happens, I'm going to be happy, but it's not very realistic. So if I can see a standard that is maybe a bit of a stretch, but it's still within a reasonable distance, like I can actually conceive of reaching that point, that's a lot more motivating to me. So I think the fact that moving to D3, I think people might be a little more motivated to try and strive and really push themselves to get to those standards. So hopefully that can be a motivating factor for them, and we can see some good results all around. Scott, I haven't done any resisted treadmill stuff in the past month or so, partly because when I hurt my arm, I didn't want to do anything where I was pushing on it. And also just because I felt like I was really lacking like the reactive kind of really speed-oriented feelings in my training. And so I decided to shift away a little bit from resisted sprints, heavier lifts, and things like that, and just focus on running fast. And as a result of doing that, I'm now seeing some much better acceleration times. So I think I'm going to bring back some of the resisted sprints and resisted treadmill stuff now that I feel a little bit quicker. I'll probably add a little bit more in over the next training cycle, because I'm going to go into an accumulation training cycle again. And let me turn up the volume here, Kyle. Yeah, that was low. Let's see. I'm going to turn up the gain. Turn this thing around real quick. All right. How does that sound? Am I blowing out your speakers now? Am I giving you permanent ear damage because it's too loud? I hope not. I hope not. Please don't sue me if that got too loud and hurt your ears. But yeah, I think I'm gonna add a little bit more resisted sprinting, either with the resisted treadmill or with the sled. But I did get signed up at a gym where they have Kaiser equipment. They also have the Woodway treadmills and things like that. So I'll probably be bringing in a little bit different equipment into my strength training and all that. And that's funny, Kyle. So we'll see. Maybe I'll be bringing out some new exercises, new equipment, and things like that over the next couple training cycles as I get into this new gym and try everything out. Well, let's see. I've got one cat here sleeping, so she's not celebrating my birthday very much. And my fiance, she moved, so she took on a new job in my hometown back in California. So we're basically planning to eventually fully move, but in the meantime, she's staying with my family to try out the job. And so I'm actually just celebrating my birthday by myself today, but I'm with you guys, so that's cool. But eventually I think I'll be moving back to California if everything goes well with the job. We're able to find a place that we can afford, that sort of thing, because it's super expensive where I'm from, and it's just hard to make it there, So we're hoping things work out to where we can fully make the move. But right now she's trying a new job. She just went out 2 weeks ago and is kind of getting into that. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, Scott, you guys had some really good improvements over this off season. It seems like some major power improvements, and it also seems like that's connecting with their technique too. And I would imagine that with the resisted treadmill stuff, as you get better with that, that's one of those things that can inherently help your technique without having to coach the technique. Because if you learn to apply force in the right direction with a little bit of resistance, that can be a teaching tool in and of itself. So not only are they getting better from just physiologically, they're getting stronger and better wiring in their nervous system, but I would imagine it's probably helping their technique too. So if anyone out there is on Instagram, check out Rad Squad, R-A-D, I believe it's RAD_squad, right? But Scott's got some good content out there. He's got some good athletes he's training, and we have some good chats from time to time. If your top speed is not improving, let's see. I would first look at, are you running too tense? Are you not letting the movements happen? Are you trying to force it? The other thing I would really look at is, when are you trying to apply force? Because a lot of people, they wait for the ground to then produce force. When in sprinting, we have to set ourselves up to attack the ground, to apply force right when we hit the ground, and then that creates the forces that send us over the ground into the next stride. But if you instead you're trying to just push behind yourself the whole way, sometimes you can get a little bit skewed where now you're trying to apply force late in the stride cycle. It disrupts your pelvic positioning, it disrupts your timing, to where then you're sort of always trying to catch up with yourself because it just messes with your timing. And so I would say, try to work on creating force production from the downward attack with your leg into the ground, rather than waiting to feel the ground and then pushing the ground away from you. It's fine during acceleration to just push behind you and, aim for that kind of feeling. But when you're in top speed running, it needs to feel more like you're tapping the ground, and you're setting yourself up so that you bring the leg to the front side, you rapidly attack from the front side down under you, and then once you hit the ground, you're letting that leg recover and go into the next stride cycle, or into the next stride. So if you look at yourself, if you slow motion video yourself from the side, and you see that when your foot comes off the ground, that your leg is still extending at the hip, or your leg is still moving back, or at the very least it's not moving forward, like you're not flexing your hip, you're not bringing your knee through to the front side right when your foot comes off the ground, then that's a sign you're pushing behind yourself too late in the stride cycle, and that can be something that really disrupts your top speed. So make sure you're running fairly relaxed. Obviously you're going to be running at a very intense level, but you don't want to be like feeling like you're deadlifting when you're running at top speed. But also look at the timing of when are you applying force. If you're crashing forward into the ground and then you have to overcome that and then push off behind you, that's going to screw up all your top speed sprinting. So that's why people emphasize frontside mechanics, because it allows you to set yourself up for a proper force application into the ground. I've said this many times. When we are on the ground, when our foot hits the ground, 80% of the force that we produce in sprinting is produced right when you hit the ground. Only 20% is produced when your foot is behind your body. Like if you think of you hit the ground and your body passes over your foot, only 20% of the force is going to be produced when the foot is now behind your body. So if instead if we try to produce all the force back here, it's going to mess everything up. So we need to use frontside mechanics, not because we need to have high knees when we sprint for no reason. No, we don't need high knees. But what we need is the foot and the leg to come to the front side so we can then aggressively attack down, produce a lot of force right when the foot hits the ground. And if you do that, you're going to have pretty good top speed running. Nice. December 10th. That's coming quick, man. Dang. That's early. My first meet will probably be the second week of January, something like that. The meets that they hold at NAU, which is Northern Arizona University up in Flagstaff, where they have an indoor track, because right now it's snowing and it gets pretty cold up there. It's like basically Arctic Alpine as far as life zones. And they hold meets from January through the end of February. There's also a couple, now that I think about it, I think there are going to be some indoor meets, so they're held on an outdoor track, but they run the indoor distances. We might have some of those in December, so if those pop up and I'm feeling good, I'll go out for those. But otherwise, as far as true indoor meets where they're actually in an indoor facility, that'll probably be early January. Yeah, it really depends where you're at. I noticed that, like on the East Coast of the U.S., there's a lot more meets earlier in the year because, they have indoor facilities are much more prevalent there. So they probably want to get as much competing in as they can so they can try to make it to, indoor, whatever, the conference championships or national championships, things like that. Whereas on the western half of the U.S., there's very few indoor tracks. There are if you go north, because obviously it's colder up there. But in Arizona, there's only one indoor track that I know of. In California, I don't know of any indoor tracks. There might be one, but I don't know of any. There is one in New Mexico, which is just east of Arizona. So if I'm feeling good and I feel like I got a good chance of running well, I might go to New Mexico, because that's usually where they hold the USATF indoor championships. I competed there when I was in college, and it's a really nice facility. You get a lot of top level athletes going, so it's a great meet to go to. But it's one of those things where, I don't want to pay to travel if I'm going to go run, 7:05 or something. So if I'm going to run 6:8, 6:9, 6:7, then it's worth it to me to go somewhere like New Mexico. Otherwise, I'll just focus on going to Flagstaff. Since it's only a 2-hour drive, I can go up, compete, come back in the same day, and it's a little bit cheaper to make that happen. What's up, Rasky? Got another one here. So TB says, I want to start sprinting. Should I focus on building general strength first in the gym, or just get started on a sprint program right away? So I guess my first question would be is, have you sprinted at all? Because if you haven't sprinted at all, it might be wise to do a little bit of just tempo running. So it could be pretty short. It could be short as like 60 or 90 meters. Go up to maybe 120 when you first start out. And just get the feeling of running at 75%. Get your body used to the impacts. And then you can start bringing in short acceleration training and build from there. But I would say the general strength work needs to be there definitely from day one, as should very short accelerations, like 10-meter accelerations or something like that. So a combination of short accelerations, tempo endurance work that's 75% effort or slower, and then general strength work in the gym. And then from there, you can build from that point. But if you jump into trying to run your fastest for a 40-meter sprint, that's where you're going to blow out your hamstring or something like that. So just start short with the sprint work, very short, and then bring in a little bit of kind of the medium distance stuff with the tempo runs, pair that with general strength training in the gym, and then you can just progress naturally from there. So the free lap timers don't take into account reaction time, but they did just release a cone that will give you a starting gun sound, and it'll start the clock when the gun goes off, so that will take into account reaction time. So I'm looking into getting that. It is a little expensive. It's like $300, but I think it would be cool to check it out, try it out, show it to you guys so you can see what it's all about and see if it's something you'd want to buy. But that is on my mind to get. So they did just release something that allows you, the E-starter, exactly. The E-starter cone allows you to get reaction time in your sprint times. One thing I've noticed though is that when I do sprints without reaction time, so just using the thumb pad, touchpad thing to start, that the times I run, say a week before a meet using that, are pretty similar to what I'll run. Sometimes it's even faster in a meet just because you're more revved up and stimulated. So it'll be interesting to see how much of a difference in time there is. But I think ultimately, like I talked about in that recent video, if you can work your reaction time in practice, it's only going to help you. So I would like to get that E-starter so I can know what my times are with reaction time, as well as just to work that all the time. That app that I used on my Apple Watch, I noticed since I made the video, this is like this is one of those things that you just got to laugh at. I make the video where I can use the app on my Apple Watch to use the starting gun. I post the video, great. The next time I go to the track to use it, it didn't work. I'm like, what? What is that? It wouldn't make any sound. So I'm trying to figure that out. Let's see. If you just started lifting weights, you'll probably get slower for a period of time because of the fatigue and because your body's adapting to that lifting. I'm responding to yes 1R right now. So you just got to stick with it. If you continue to not see your times improve, then you need to switch to more reactive strength work. But the reactive strength work only does its job if you have a base of strength. So I would focus on continuing to do what you're doing. Make sure your volumes of work are reasonable, that you're able to recover between your sessions, but you're still working hard. Do that for a couple training cycles, and then shift more toward reactive strength work. And as you get away from the slower strength work that's more general or absolute strength oriented, then you'll start to see your times improve. So you have to be patient when you're doing strength work, like general strength, absolute strength work. It will slow you down in the meantime. But eventually, you will start to see that your times will improve as you shift your training. You could probably do 2 times a week and get away with that. Like I tend to lift 2 times a week, sometimes 1 time a week, and that works out. What's up, Aiden? Aiden's on the Arcadia team. Thanks for stopping in. Let's see. Have I experienced burnout? So burnout is a sign that you're not recovering enough. So I would do a deload week. I would take a couple extra days of rest. You still want to train, but keep the volume really low. Just focus on warming up, getting a couple good sprints in, or a couple, sets in the gym at a lower volume than what you're used to, with extra days of rest in, and then you'll start to feel better. But if it continues, then you need to be really careful about how much work you're doing. And I would look back to see, what is the training that you've done in the past month? How many times have you taken a day off? How many times have you stacked high volumes of high intensity training back to back in your training program? And if you're getting burnt out mentally, physically, that's a sign that you've reached your limit of how much you can train at the moment, and you need to reduce the volume, let your body recover, and then you'll start to get better. But if we never let our body recover, we never do a deload week where we're taking extra rest, we have lower volume of training, then we never have an opportunity to get better. We only get better if we stress our body to a reasonable amount or a reasonable level, and then we recover enough for our body to, get over that stress, and then we can perform at a higher level. Let's see. Yeah, 3-point starts with the touchpad tend to be faster because of that rolling aspect. That's definitely true. Yeah, getting the body going and overcoming inertia, like what Kyle's talking about, going from 0 meters per second to 1 meters per second, that's going to take longer than anything. Like, for me to push off of the blocks, I think it takes like 0.35 to 0.37 seconds. So that's like, further down the track, I'll be covering multiple meters in that long, whereas it takes me that long just to get off of the blocks. So I think being able to incorporate reaction time in your training so you can really be able to recruit all that muscle and really just fire everything at the right time with good technique is a trainable quality. So we need to train that by using reaction time as much as we can. Because sometimes, if I go from having not done any reaction time training and then I do it, I'll often run slower initially until I get better at it, and then I start to run faster and see that improve. So as with anything, we got to work the specific skills. We got to work sprinting, but we also have to think of how do we replicate a competition environment in practice as best as we can, especially the closer that we get to the track season. Appreciate the birthday wishes, guys. By the way, if anyone wants to check out any recent articles I've posted, anything like that, you can check out my website, sprintingworkouts.com. I'll pin that at the top. Yeah, I think it'll take time for that change in your training, going from 3 to 4 times a week down to just a few times a week. It'll take time for that to have an effect. If you're already fatigued and you make a change in your training, it might take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks before you start to come out of that. So once you sense yourself getting into that state of kind of exhaustion where you're not as motivated, that's where I would try to learn from that and prevent it in the future. But in the meantime, you just sort of have to deal with it. Certain things like, making sure your protein intake is high enough, because that'll help with neurotransmitters like, tyrosine, and or it'll give you the amino acids like tyrosine, which help produce neurotransmitters. So make sure your protein intake is high enough. Make sure your carb intake is high enough so you can fuel what you're doing. Make sure to be fueling yourself around the workout. I would look at how often are you looking at your phone late at night before you go to bed, because that can affect your sleep. All these things play a role. I would also look at, like, do you get selenium in your diet, because that helps with thyroid function, and thyroid function is really important. So you have to be patient. Once you've entered a state where you do feel overly fatigued, you have to roll with it for a while and just make sure you don't continue to overstress your body. Do more of a minimalist approach with your sprint training, and then eventually you'll start to feel better. Do I think athletic performance training is moving away from traditional strength training? I wouldn't say that it is, like, as a generalization, but there are a lot of people who maybe get caught up in, like, functional training, whatever that means, or maybe they're a little bit more cognizant of how much athletes need to be loaded. But traditional strength training, like, we're never going to get away from the fact that, like, that's what makes you stronger, and getting stronger underlies improvement in performance, especially for people who aren't super, like, trained athletes. Like, if you've been training for 30 years, well, obviously strength training is only going to have so much of an effect as far as performance enhancement. It might be really good for hormonal production and injury prevention and things like that. But for younger athletes, like high school or college athletes, traditional strength training is key. But I think also, if you're not very comfortable with knowing how much loading is required in the gym, it's a safer route to err on the side of caution and just generally do less. I would rather, like, for example, with the team last year, we barely lifted at all, but I still had people dropping a second off their 100 time. And I'm not talking they went from 20 seconds to 19 seconds for 100. We're talking 12 seconds to 11 seconds. So if we can do that without lifting, yeah, you could say that lifting only has so much of an effect, but I still think it's important. It's just, for me, at my point in my training, I know that I've done a lot of traditional strength training. I already am just generally strong. Like, I can go in the gym and deadlift 405 after not deadlifting for a year. I can bench, a couple plates easily without benching for a year. So I already have general strength within me. I just need to make sure that it's maintained and then build the more reactive strength qualities on that. But that doesn't mean that a high school athlete needs to train like I do. A high school athlete needs to do more traditional strength training because they need to get generally stronger before they're going to benefit a lot from the reactive stuff. So a lot of it has to do with when in your career you're applying a certain type of training, when in the season you're applying that. And, like what Kyle's saying, if you're not naturally gifted, then you have to get stronger. Like, there's no way around it. If you're super gifted, then you might not need it. So that's the other thing, is when you get, like, for example, Tony Holler with Feed the Cats. He gets a kid who can run 10-4 in high school. As a coach, like, at that point, you're just trying to not mess them up. I'm not taking away anything from Tony and his success that he's had, but you have to look at that. If I had a bunch of 10-4 athletes, like, yeah, I'm going to be very careful. If I have someone who runs 18 seconds in 100, they need to lift because they need to get stronger because they simply can't support their body weight to run down the track at any appreciable speed. You know what I mean? Am I still interested in long jumping? I am interested in long jumping. It's just, I have to be careful about the training because it's really brutal on your body. Like, if you're not used to jumping, long jump is very harsh on your body. And for me, it messes up my, like, adductor, my calf. So I have to be pretty strategic with when I'm doing that. So I am still working on it, but I don't know when exactly I'll feel comfortable with competing in the long jump. I'm just going to take kind of a slow approach with it and build up over time, Dang, my phone over here is going crazy. I'm just going to leave that over there. Don't need to look at that. How many tips for the 400? I would say, A, you have to learn how to run your own race. I know that's kind of a cliche, but you really do. B, you do have to do a good amount of, like, tempo running, intensive tempo, to set you up for special endurance training. But I'd have to know more about your specific situation for that. Thoughts on starting an off-season trying to build top-end speed or speed endurance base? I think initially you should still be doing acceleration, because then you can get your body used to those velocities, Tremere. So if you jump straight into top speed or speed endurance work, it's really easy to get hurt. So that's my main concern there. So just start with shorter acceleration work, build that up as you feel comfortable, and then as soon as you feel like you can hop into top speed and speed endurance work without getting hurt, then I'd start doing that. Let's see. Trying to catch up with the chat here. JT, did Usain's height leg length give him an advantage? What about you? If you were 6'5", do you think you'd run faster? I think as long as you can move your legs reasonably fast, being taller is helpful. It's just a lot of tall athletes struggle with acceleration. So I think for me, if I could be like 6'2" instead of 5'11" and 3/4 or 6 foot or whatever I am, it would probably help me a little bit. Like if I was Marcel Jacobs' height, I'd probably benefit from that. But my younger brother is 6'7", and he really struggles with like opening up and accelerating and all that. So I think it's tough to say. Height in and of itself, not necessarily going to help you. Leg length can help you for sure, as long as you have the coordination, the speed of movement, all those things. So if you have the same athlete and you just make their legs longer, yeah, they're probably going to run faster. And that's why certain shoes are banned. So there's certain distance running shoes that are too tall, like the sole is too tall to be legal, because now their leg length is longer. So that would point to the fact that longer leg length is helpful. But once again, it has to fit into the whole athlete overall. I haven't seen Graham Tuttle's stuff, but I'll check it out. Definitely always interested in, seeing different ways of doing it. Foot strength is definitely key. I notice if I do a lot of tempo running, my feet get sore, so that tells me that tempo is probably a good thing to do. If I have a really fast day, like out of nowhere I run faster one day, my feet get sore then too. So looking into some foot strengthening exercises, that's a good idea. Thanks for that, CJ. Today you did power cleans and then got outside and did acceleration work. I'd probably do the acceleration work first. But I mean, those are, considering your body weight is only 112, like you're moving good weight, but if you're just getting into weightlifting, it's going to be pretty taxing because it's a new stimulus. It's a new skill to learn. And every time you introduce a new movement pattern you're trying to learn, or you add stress in the form of just lifting more weight or things like that, that's going to make you like just overall more stressed. And so it's going to take time for your body to adapt to that. So I would just keep it light, sets of like you're doing 2 to 4 reps, only a few, maybe 3 to 4 sets like you're doing. Don't push the weight too hard. Don't feel like you got to like load up the bar like crazy. Learn the movements, see how your body responds, and then increase the loading from there. Don't increase the loading drastically before you have a good idea of how you're going to respond. So if you're hurting your groin when you do acceleration and then flies, I would be looking at, are you over pushing? Are you trying to push for too long behind yourself so that you're trying to extend your hip when really you should be flexing the hip and letting that leg come through naturally? If you're forcing the extension too much, that'll put you at risk of a groin injury. I would also just consider, you might need to do some Copenhagen planks or things like that to work on the adductor strength. You might benefit from doing a little bit of light stretching of the adductors just to get them used to handling tension at a slightly longer length. to help prevent injury. I'm not saying you need to go stretch like crazy, but just a little bit of stretching, a little bit of isometric work like a Copenhagen plank. And then I would look to see, are you overextending or trying to extend for too long during acceleration? That can definitely irritate your groin. So if that's happening, I'd probably minimize the acceleration work on those flying sprint days, and try to look at improving your adductor strength. Thanks, Allison. I appreciate that. Yeah, 10-4 would be great. I believe I'm capable. It's just things have to fall into place at the right time. But I think physically, I think I have the physical capability to do it. Jelly beans, yeah, aqua jogging, swimming. I like to go in the jacuzzi or the pool. The pool's super cold, and I struggle with cold temperatures, so I like the jacuzzi. But I do like hip range of motion stuff, adductor, abductor work, leg swings, high knee runs, stuff like that in the pool, arm swings in the pool. All that stuff is good for just general training. And if it's a low intensity, not a high volume of work, then I think it can be good for recovery. Kyle, what's your opinion on running in the dark? I mean, it's only dangerous from the perspective that you might run into something. I think it's sort of an intriguing idea to me to remove sensory stimuli like not being able to see as well, so you have to just react to the ground or whatever. But I also think that when we sprint, if we're looking at the horizon, our brain will know where to put our foot down because it can sense how high we are off the ground and all that. So if you're doing sprinting at night, I would just make sure that you're easing into it. I have done some sessions at night, and it was actually kind of fun. So I think there's something to be, that might be a little experiment. Is running at night going to change your proprioception and give you something different to deal with, slightly different feel in your sprinting? Maybe there's something to gain there. But I don't have a strong opinion on running in the dark other than that it's probably optimal to not to optimal is one of those buzzwords. It's probably optimal to run with some light just so that your brain can sense where the ground is. So in high school, I competed in my freshman year, my junior year, and my senior year. I didn't compete my sophomore year. I think I ran 12.6 my first year, 11.6 my junior year, and 11.3 my senior year. Fully automatic timing. For ankle stiffness, seated calf raise is good. Pogo hops are good. Part of ankle stiffness is also where you put your foot down on the ground. If you put your foot down in front of your body on the ground, then there's going to be so much leverage from your body weight pushing down that your ankle is going to collapse no matter how strong it is. If you put your foot down under your hip, it's going to be a lot easier to maintain ankle stiffness during acceleration. But as far as strengthening exercises, I do like the seated calf raise a lot. You could do regular calf raises, but if you're doing a lot of tempo running, you might not need to, because you're getting a lot of exposure to, calf work in that extended position. Let's see. Yeah, see, Kyle's a great example of someone who continued to work on honing their skills after high school. So whatever you run in high school is not indicative of what you necessarily can run after high school. If your training wasn't very good, or like me, I was too up in my head. I was too I wasn't very good at running without thinking. It took me a long time to get to that point. Now I can run and not think about it and run pretty consistently at the speeds that I run at. So just because you're running certain times in high school doesn't mean that you're not going to improve after high school. As long as you keep working on it, you will continue to improve. I do like sprinting backwards. Not necessarily to gain speed in and of itself, but I think A, you're going to get good hip flexor work. B, it's just a different, if we're always going in one direction, we're going to get biased toward running in that direction. And so I think it's good for our brain. I think it's good for our tissues to run backwards. So I do backwards running in my warm-up. I notice that it warms up my hamstrings a little better, feels a little bit different on my ankles. And so incorporating forward, backward, and side-to-side movement I think is wise, even if your sport is simply sprinting in a straight line going forward. I think we should be competent with moving in different directions, both forward and backward. Yeah, 12.4 as a freshman is definitely solid. I have no problem with that. By thinking too much, so say you step up to the line to run and you're thinking about, okay, I need to drive my knees and put my foot down here, or I need to swing my arm this way, or just like having a bunch of things that you're telling yourself you need to do. Or I think sprinting needs to happen in a very mindless state. There may be like one thing you focus on or nothing, but it should be more about sensing what's going on when you sprint, maybe looking at video, seeing if there's anything to adjust. But like your baseline with sprinting should not be that you're thinking about a lot of things. It should be a more reactive, more of a primal activity. And a lot of I think one reason why the dumb jock stereotype exists is because if you're not very smart, you probably don't think in a very complex way. So you have these guys who may not seem very smart, but they're super athletic. It's because they're not analyzing everything. You know, paralysis by overanalysis is a huge factor. And the more you think, the more you get in the way of what your body can do naturally. So you can't consciously make yourself sprint as fast as possible. It has to happen subconsciously. It has to happen as a result of you just letting your body do its thing. So if you're stepping up to the line thinking about all kinds of different things of technique or how to move or whatever it may be, that's going to slow you down. You know, it's like putting a weight vest on. If you think up here all this stuff, it's going to weigh you down mentally, and that's going to weigh you down physically. So I think being able to sprint with less of a focus on any given thing, and then maybe responding on the next rep if there was something that was drastically off, yeah, you work on that one thing. If you're overstriding, yeah, we need to think about putting the foot down in the right spot. But once you get that, then it needs to be just an automatic process, not something you're consciously, forcing out of you, or that you're analyzing every possible movement going on. We don't have the time to do that when we're sprinting. We don't have the luxury of time. We have to be working so fast that it has to happen subconsciously. Robert, that was you. Oh man, that when I saw that come through, I was like so thankful. that was really really awesome of you to do that. So feel free to reach out anytime. Maybe send me a message or send me an email, and I'd be happy to give you any pointers or anything like that to try and make sure that the program works for you. I would look at the programs as a guidance, but not a prescription. So if it tells you to do something and you're feeling like, something's bothering me, or that seems like a little bit too much, just take the general theme of it and try to adapt it to your situation. You may not do as many reps. You may do more reps at a lower weight. You may modify the exercises a little bit, but just try to look at the programs as a guidance tool, to give you an idea of how to set up training and all that. And then over time, as you get into it, you'll start to know, okay, yeah, this type of workout I can do really well and I don't get too sore after, or this workout or this exercise when I do it, it really makes me sore, or it bothers this part of my body or something. And then you can be more intuitive with how you set up your training. But that was a great birthday present to buy all this program, so thank you, Robert. I really appreciate that, man. Yeah, ever since Kyle, ever since you said that, I've started to do the same thing, and it actually works. Go forward or move forward as fast as you can actually works as a cue. And I think one reason it works is because you're focusing on an outcome, not a specific movement it's an external cue. It's a result-based cue. And you're just telling your brain, this is what I want to do, and then you let your brain and your body make it happen. So definitely a good cue. A cue can be as simple as go forward, or go forward as fast as you can. See, Luke, exactly. That's exactly what we're talking about. Oh, yeah, pitching is a perfect example of something where it's easy to overthink. Or even batting. Baseball was my first sport, and the interesting thing with that is when I was playing baseball and I wasn't being coached very much, I was a pretty good baseball player. Make it to all-star teams and all that. Then they started coaching me, and I got worse because then I was thinking. I went from having a natural swing, a natural arm, all that stuff, to then thinking, oh, I have to do this, I have to do all these things, and it just messed me up, and it sucked. So whether it's sprinting, whether it's baseball, whether it's football, whatever it is, you have to operate, or like you said here, Luke, running a 40 with a rugby ball or not, we have to find ways to get out of our own head and let our body do what it knows best. We evolved as human beings to be able to run away from threats. And that's where competing in practice helps, because there's a little bit of a threat there. You don't want to run slow. You don't want to lose. Chasing someone, being chased, running with a football, all those things help you get out of your own head. Alternatives to hang cleans, you could do a hex bar jump where you start tall, standing there, you drop quickly and then jump up from that. That could be something to do to replace a hang clean. Drop squats are okay as well, but they're a little bit slower than probably the hex bar jump. Just don't load the hex bar jump too high. That's the biggest mistake that would happen there. I don't know if a 6'11" athlete, that might be going to the extreme. My cat is yelling at the neighbors. I might have to bring him inside for a second, so I may have to depart here just briefly. He likes to yell at the neighbors when I'm doing things. I don't know if a 6'11" athlete would be optimal for the 400, but hey, who knows? I'd be down to try. If he came to me and said, help me run faster, I'd be totally down to try. Let's see. Demon Slayer, you might just be better built for the longer run, you might just be a very gifted long distance runner, and that's why. So your body handles that longer running at a slightly slower pace better. Hang on one second. I'm going to bring this cat in. He's yelling at everybody. Puffs. Ruining my live stream, dude. You got people asking questions. You're yelling at everybody. All right, the angry cat has been wrangled, and he is back inside to come yell at us now. Let's see. For the off season, will one top end speed day and one speed endurance day help me improve? Yeah, totally. You can sprint 2 times a week and get better. When I was working a full-time job, I ran 677 in practice, and I was sprinting twice a week. So, you do what you can, don't go overboard, and you'll run fast. It's when we overload ourselves that we start to run into problems. Here is the guy who was yelling at everybody. Yeah, you were yelling at everybody? I was looking at the 100-meter races, 2009, estimated stride length, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, everybody will have a slight asymmetry with their stride length, stride frequency from leg to leg. It's just kind of how we are as humans. Nobody is totally symmetrical. What are the main signs you see when overtraining? So, irritability is one. So if you find yourself getting kind of pissed off at things that you wouldn't normally get mad about, that's one thing. Another thing is if you can't seem to wake up throughout the day, or say you go to the gym, you lift the bar off the rack and it feels way heavier than normal, that's a sign that you're fatigued. Say you go to the track to sprint and you just feel like you can't quite push at that level that you normally can, that's a sign that you might be a little bit overtrained. So I would heed those warnings. Yeah, you can track heart rate variability, you can get an omega wave, track your CNS levels, things like that, but a lot of the signs that you're going to have about overtraining are just internal, and it's a feeling. You can just feel that you're more sluggish, or you have a little more pain than usual. You lift the bar and it's heavy, that sort of thing. Yeah, so that's puffs. That that's Puffs. He's aptly named because he's quite poofy. His 100 time, I don't know. He's a little slow. So he's the one who will let him outside. Like, I'll open the front door and let him kind of flop around on the ground, sniff around, whereas the other two I won't because he's the slowest out of the bunch. So I know I can chase him down if I need to. So he probably runs at, maybe a 14-second 100. Let's see. And sorry if I'm missing any questions. I'm trying to keep up here and get to as many of you guys as I can. So if I miss your question, it's not personal or anything like that. I see the ones I see and then I move on. For me, getting out of my own head during pre-meets, part of that is just, I'm going into my 10th season as a track athlete. So having competed that many times, it's a little easier to do it. I know a lot of religious people and they'll pray or they'll, try to put their faith in their faith. For non-religious people, I would say think about things like all the training that you've put in. Think of all the hours you've put in over time, and you just have to trust in yourself. And the other thing is, why do we overthink? Because we're fearing failure. Why would I step up to the line and think about all the things I need to do? Why? Because I didn't have faith in my own ability and my body's wisdom, not even my own wisdom, but my body's wisdom to move down the track effectively. So you have to identify, what are you fearing? Are you afraid of not running fast? Well, why? What does running fast have to do with you as a person? Yes, we all want to run faster for sure, but what threat exists that you are, you may not even consciously feel threatened, but what is the threat that is there that is causing you to overthink? And if you're afraid of not running the right time, or you're afraid of doing the wrong thing with your movements or anything like that, I would try to identify that and logically reason with yourself as to why that's not something you need to worry about, and then just let it be. Like, be at peace with whatever the outcome is, and then you have nothing to fear. If I go to a race and I tell myself, look, if I run 12 seconds or 10 seconds, that's not going to change how I view myself as a person. That doesn't define me as a person. So if you kind of set that, then it's a little bit easier to not put the pressure on yourself, because ultimately you need to go out and have fun. If you go out and you try to focus on your running meets because you enjoy it, then that's going to put you in a place where you can perform well. But if it's about, I need to run this time because I need to prove to myself all these things and I need to show everyone how fast I am and all that stuff, then you're going to go down the route of overthinking, fearing failure, and all that. But if instead you go to a meet and you just enjoy it, you look around, man, beautiful weather out, we got a great facility to run at. I'm so thankful that I live in a place where I can have a track meet that I can go to. I'm thankful that I have a body that I can compete with. There's people out there in wheelchairs who don't have legs or who have chronic illnesses or things like that, or they live somewhere where they don't have access to a track. And so being grateful for the fact that you can compete and trying to have fun when you compete, that helps. Like, when I ran 1078 this year, I was just so happy to be at the Olympic Training Center at a meet where I was around, all the Indian team was there, and I met one of the coaches. He's seen some of my videos. The Ukrainian team was there. There were other teams there. I was like, this is cool. There's pro athletes everywhere. They're getting ready for world championships. Like, this is sick. I got a guy who runs 10:0 that I'm going to race against today. Like, when do I get that opportunity? So I just tried to embrace the fact that I was there and have fun. And then I ran my season's best in the fastest time I've run in however many years it's been. So I think, not to beat a dead horse here, but I think that's one way to approach it. Let's see. Can you become a good sprinter even though distance running is in your family? I think you can. Don't limit yourself. And you might find that becoming a better sprinter makes you a fantastic middle distance runner. The distance coach at my high school tried to get me to run the 800 because he said, you have world-class speed for the 800. You have the foot speed to be a world-class 800 runner. Now, I was terrible at cardio, so that's a big factor. But if you have distance abilities in your body, then putting sprint training onto that is going to make you faster, and maybe the 100 isn't what you're best at. Maybe you're best at the 400 or the 800 or the 1500, but that speed training can improve your abilities that you're already genetically gifted to run well in distance events, you apply some speed onto that, and now you're a great distance runner. Because the best distance runners out there are still fast. You know, Kipchoge is still fast. David Rudisha, still a fast guy. So you just got to find where you best fit into the events, and then use the types of training like sprint training to help you in that, along with the other training that's relevant for that event. So if I do sprinting, weightlifting one day, upper body next day, back and forth, my overtraining, I'd probably try to, if I was doing that, I would probably do the sprint and weightlifting on day one, the upper body stuff day two, and then take the third day off and see how you feel. And then if you feel like you're recovering really well, you could do, you know, sprint, lift, sprint. But you got to be careful about stacking back-to-back days on one another. You know, I would err on the side of, if you train 2 days in a row, take a third day off, or just go out for a warm-up, something that's not intense, not going to stress your body. You know, sometimes I feel like, oh, I got to train, I got to do something. So when I get in that mindset, I try to think about what can I do that's not going to take away from my recovery abilities. Or I just take a day off and say, look, just take some time off, dude, you know. So I would just be careful about stacking a bunch of back-to-back days together over the long run. In the short term, it's fine. If you're only looking at 3 days, that's okay. But as you stack those 3-day cycles on one another, if you go a whole week and you only have 1 day off, it's probably not enough to recover. So I think the thing with the question about overtraining being good, overtraining is not good, but how motivated someone is going to modify how quickly they reach the overtraining state. The other thing is, you know, I doubt Kobe Bryant was waking up and deadlifting 500 pounds and, you know, doing like super crazy stuff. He was probably doing some lighter stuff, or, you know, nothing that was like super intense. Or he did a bunch of free throws, you know, things that aren't going to take away from your ability to perform. So the way I would look at that with sprinting is like, you know, are you doing little things to strengthen your feet? Are you doing things to make sure your mobility is good? Are you going to the right doctor, like JT said? That's funny. There's a lot of factors involved, you know, and so erring on the side of allowing your body to recover is key, because if you don't recover, you will never be in a state of readiness to perform, ever. You can't get past that fact of life. You know, if I were to study for a test, and I studied for 36 hours in a row and then took the test the next day, I probably wouldn't do very well because I didn't sleep for however long, you know? Doesn't matter how hard I worked on studying, if I wasn't in a state of readiness to take that test, it's not going to happen. So with training, do as much as you can, but you have to trust in giving your body the opportunity to recover, because that's what's going to allow your nervous system, your muscles, everything to be in a state that will allow you to perform well. Puffs, you got a lot of complaints, dude. The complaint department is closed, but you still have a lot of complaints. Come on over here, big guy. Puffs is a mama's boy, so the fact that Jessica is not here right now, he misses her, and so he has a lot of complaints to share with everybody, so we got to give him extra attention since he's a mama's boy and his mom's not here right now. So sorry, big guy. Yeah, the whole Dr. Muller thing is interesting. And that's the thing, you know, whether they're going to a doctor and they're getting, you know, extra support, or they're just physically very gifted and mentally they're on a whole nother level, you can't take what they do and apply it to yourself and expect to have the same results. How they got to that point, you know, we don't know how much training they did to get to the point where they are. Like that video I shared of Karsten Warholm doing those like bouncy deadlift things with 300 kilos. We don't know what led up to that. So if we then try to do that ourselves, we might be missing, you know, 90% of the picture, thinking, oh, I got to do this to get better, when really there's a lot of other factors involved, you know. And, you know, the whole doping thing, it's an unfortunate aspect of sports, but at the end of the day, you know, we're that it goes back to like training because you enjoy it. You have to have something other than the performance itself that drives you. All the people who I've seen who were purely results driven, who were my age, who I was coming up with in high school and college, none of them are still training. I'm like the only one left. Why? Not because I think I'm going to go break a world record, but because I enjoy it and it's what I like to do. It's like it's my special interest, you know, it's the thing that gets me going in the morning. So, finding fulfillment in what you do, whatever it is, whether it's training or something else, like it doesn't matter what it is, there has to be some inherent driver or something intrinsic within you that drives you to do it, not some external factor like, oh, I'm going to be famous because I ran fast, you know? How to know if strength and power is needed. I mean, I would look at some basic things like, you know, can you squat your body weight? Can you squat 1.5 times your body weight? Once you get up to like 1.7 or 2 times body weight, that's where general strength training is going to become less beneficial. Like the diminishing returns effect will kick in. So if you can't squat your body weight, you need to get stronger. If you can squat your body weight and you can squat a little bit more than that, yeah, you can continue to do some of that work, but then you might start doing more of that like reactive strength work or focusing on your pogo hops and things like that to get a little bit more quick off the ground, work on that like that the wiring more than just the raw strength stuff. Well, Kyle, you're just a beast, dude. You're a whole different animal. Kyle is one of the strongest relative to body weight. Kyle's one of the strongest dudes around in sprinting. So, you know, you're unique, man. I have done oscillatory strength training. I don't know. I liked it. I don't do it now really, but it seemed like it felt good, you know. Something to mess around with for sure. I wouldn't make it like the main thing I'm doing in my training, but I see some benefits there, like working on tendon elasticity and end ranges of motion, or I think it can also help with mobility a little bit to work those end ranges of motion. But I would also consider, are you going to benefit from oscillatory training over just full range of motion strength training? I don't know. Something to think about. I think 2 days of sprint training is fine. If I sprint more than like 3 times a week fast, that's when I start to get at risk of being overly fatigued. So I think 2 to 3 fast sprint days plus a tempo workout is kind of where I start to find my limit. I would also maybe expand your view outside of just a week time frame. So maybe think of 10 days, maybe think of 2 weeks. You know, how many sprint days can I get in 2 weeks? Maybe it's 5 sprint sessions in 2 weeks. So that could be 2 one week and 3 the next week or something like that. But yeah, if you zoom out a little bit, it's easier to look at your program and see that you have everything you need within it. Whereas if you're only looking at 1 week, sometimes it's easy to think, oh, I'm not doing enough. So have you done any extreme ISOs? I haven't. I mean, I've done long duration ISOs like 30 seconds or things like that. I'll do them with my team sometimes. But that's just one of those things that, I mean, it seems like people like it, so it's worth trying, but I haven't necessarily done a lot of it myself. I'll do isometric training of various sorts. You know, sometimes I'll hold a lunge position for 30 seconds or something like that in my warm-up, but I haven't done the like 2 minutes or 3 minutes of ISOs. I get bored when I do things for that long, so maybe I should try it though. The YMCA track, is that like one of those where they have the 90-degree turns? Those are tough because usually people are jogging on them. They're really short. You could do like some short accelerations or drills or something like that, but I would probably go find a hill to sprint on, maybe a park to sprint at if you don't have access to a track. Yeah, those long ISOs definitely are painful. That's definitely a factor involved as to why I haven't gone over maybe 45 seconds, because they're a whole different animal. I did do the intense isometrics from triphasic, where you have a very heavy weight on your back and you hold the bottom position for X amount of time. That was also very intense. I try to be a little bit less extreme with my training these days, just because I want to stay healthy and I don't want to like ruin my body. When I was younger, I would go crazy with my strength training. Like, I'd be half squatting 545 or quarter squatting. It's probably a quarter squat, but just hammering weights. And I did improve in that time, but I'm faster now than I was then. So it makes me question, like, how much stress do we need? And this is another thing I was thinking about making a video about is, I don't know, like, at a basic level, you do need to increase volume. You do need to increase intensity. Your training load needs to increase. As you get used to a certain training load, you need to increase that to get better. But I don't think it's a linear relationship. I don't think that if you just continue to increase training load and stress, that you'll continue to improve. And there's a certain point at which maybe just focusing on quality is important, So, something to think about there. Johan, I would probably maintain a little bit of the full range of motion, general strength work, just so that those qualities don't go away. But I would incorporate a day of dynamic effort stuff in maybe some shorter ranges of motion. So maybe one day if you like squats, for example. I only use squats because it's an easy way to illustrate the different styles of training. You don't have to do squats, you can do whatever you want. But say you're doing squats. Maybe you maintain a little bit of that full range of motion, general strength stuff on one day, and then on another day you do shorter range of motion, more reactive strength work with that exercise. Or you warm up with full range of motion work, and then in your working sets you do more of the reactive strength work, the kind of quicker, lighter stuff. If you go more than like 6 to 8 weeks without doing any general strength work, you're going to start getting weaker. So that's the one thing to avoid. But I would start experimenting with more of those reactive type, workouts. But it doesn't have to mean that every single day of your training is that way. You could do one day general strength, one day reactive strength, or part of the workout is general strength, part of the workout is reactive strength, and I think you'd do just fine off of that. I don't know. I'm interested in what Tobogo does. Arian Knighton, I think it's tough being as young as he is and kind of being put up on a pedestal and everyone expecting a lot out of him. That's a lot to ask out of an 18-year-old kid, So I'm sure he's going to have success in the future, but because he's in America and, going through the collegiate system, or if he's going to go to college, I don't know, is he going to college or is he going to run pro? Did he sign a pro contract? I thought he did. I don't know. I feel like in Jamaica, because that's where Tobogo's from, right? Jamaica? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like in different countries it might be a little easier to be a young star athlete, just because I don't know how to explain it, but it just, there's a gut feeling within me that it's a little bit easier in other countries because there may be less pressure put on him from, NBC Sports talking about him or whatever. Oh, he's from Botswana. That's right. Yeah. But I think both of them are going to have a very bright future as long as they stay healthy and stay motivated. There's no doubt in my mind. I mean, to run 19.4 at his age is just, it's really amazing. So as time goes on, as he becomes more of a matured athlete, he'll probably have more consistent results with his performances and all that. But these guys are young, Let's see. I was thinking of who is the young guy from Jamaica who ran fast this year? There's one kid. I'm trying to think. I'm sure someone will put it in the chat. It's escaping my mind right now. Could 5 to 10% body weight for sleds potentially increase? Yeah, oblique Seville, exactly. That's who I was thinking of, is oblique Seville. Could 5 to 10% body weight for sleds potentially increase top speed? I don't know if they would increase top speed, but it could help you with your acceleration, which will help you reach top speed. But really, the only way to improve top speed is to run very fast and then, also do other types of running. But I think running fast is the most direct way to work on it, obviously. They definitely have pressure to perform, but they also have it's just a different culture of training, Their pressure is because they have so many people who are good that they're surrounded by, that everybody has to do their best, and it really pushes them all, Here you might be on a team where you're way faster than everybody else and nobody's in your league, so it's a different kind of pressure. But like I said, I think both those guys have a bright future ahead as long as they stick with it. Yeah, I'm a little skeptical of those treadmills. I have used them myself. You don't have as much of that elastic recoil off the ground. So if all you're doing is running on those like a curved treadmill or whatever, I would be hesitant to say that it's going to help you that much. But if it allows you to get a little bit more volume in and maybe not be as taxing on your system, taxing your tendons and muscles and all that, maybe they're good for tempo. But if you're only doing that and then you go to run on the ground, it's obviously going to be different. So nothing replaces running on a flat surface. You just have to do it. Yeah, I personally haven't. I think I ran on a Woodway curve once, twice, maybe. When I was at Altus as an intern, they had them there, and I did a little tempo workout on them. It felt nice, but I don't think it's going to transfer to flat ground sprinting as well as flat ground sprinting will. But also, the other thing to consider is if you live somewhere where you can't sprint outside because it's negative 30 degrees outside and you're going to die if you go out there, then yeah, definitely use your curved treadmill. That's better than nothing, no doubt in my mind. Anything's better than not doing it. And I think someone asked earlier, what to do if you can't train outside. That's where strength training is going to come into play. That's where maybe doing a little bit more high velocity strength training might be useful. Whereas if you're sprinting outside on the track a lot and you have good weather, then your gym work can be more focused on that general strength work. But if you don't have the ability to sprint and all you can do are 10-meter sprints inside of a gym or something, or some sled pulls, then you might benefit a little bit more from blending in a little bit more high velocity strength work with your general strength work, just to make sure you're working more of that dynamic effort type stuff in your training when you can't access a track outside. Addicted gamer, that would be a good question for Kyle, because he was in a similar position as you, where college age but hadn't found a team yet. But I don't think there's no real difference. It's just that you have to, you got to find the track to train at. You got to set up your own training program, or if you have a coach, work with your coach. But it's still going to be the same thing. You're going to sprint 2 to 4 times per week. You might do some tempo workouts. You might lift a couple times a week. If you're doing the 100 and 200, you want to be doing acceleration, speed work, short speed endurance work, and then that short speed endurance work can transition into long speed endurance. So it's not that there's anything specifically different for your situation. It's just you're going to have to be more reliant on yourself to manage your training load, and that's where finding a coach can help, obviously. Joining my online training group could help you, or buying a program, but you can do it on your own. You don't have to pay me to be successful. But the challenges of being a self-coached athlete are that I find it's hard to put my athlete hat on at the right time versus put my coaching hat on at the right time. Like we talked about with overthinking, if I have my coaching hat on but I'm the one sprinting, I'm going to overanalyze. So when I go out to train, I need to focus on just training. And then when I come home, yeah, I can be more of the coach and think about what I need to work on and all that. So as a self-coached athlete who's competing unattached, just make sure you're not overdoing it, really. Do the basic things like the specific work you need to run faster, acceleration, speed endurance, long speed endurance. Progress. I like to progress from short to long. You don't have to do that, but it's the easiest way for me to put together a good training program. But I'm not going to say it's easy, but it is doable, Yeah, I would not go 95% max every time you lift. Most of my lifting is probably between like 60 and 80%, and I'll lift 1 to 2 times per week. When I was younger, I would lift 3 times a week, and I'd be fatigued all the time and have inconsistent recovery and things like that. So I'd probably be if I were you, I'd probably be lifting twice a week, sprinting 3 times a week, and then lifting I'd probably be between 60 and 80% most of the time. Because once you go above 80, 85, 90%, A, there's diminishing returns. B, the effect of fatigue is very significant. I can go in and do 70% lifts and go sprint the next day, and I may not sprint my fastest, but I can still get a good workout in. If I go max out at 95%, I'm going to be fried for like 3 days. So you got to ask yourself, why are you doing 95%? You're not a power lifter. So what are you going to gain by like being at the high end of the risk side of the risk reward balance, In season for strength work, it's pretty minimal really, because you want to be developing a lot of your strength in the off season, and so at that point it's just about maintaining, which you can maintain with really low volumes. If I don't have a meet that week, I might go a little heavier just to tap into some max strength or near max strength work, like 80% or whatever. If I'm closer to a meet, I'll probably just be doing reactive strength a few days out. But I don't lift that much during the season. I could probably do a little bit more than I did last year, but yeah, I just think you can get stronger without going to 95% of your max, really. Like most power lifters, weightlifters, like they're not tapping into maxes very often because it's super fatiguing and risky. The risk of getting hurt, the risk of ruining the training for the next few days is high, but the reward is not equally high. So you'd probably be better off doing, sets of 3 to 5 at a lower percentage than doing 1 rep maxes all the time. And believe me, I'm someone who has tried to do that. I'm not I'm speaking from experience that whenever I would go and try to max all the time, it would just mess me up, So I've tried it and it didn't do it for me. Reactive strength would be, for example, say a normal squat, your feet are on the ground, you lower down at a controlled pace, and then you fire up pretty fast. A reactive variation of a squat would be picking your feet up off the ground, dropping as fast as you can, and reversing the load as fast as you can at a sub-maximal weight. Reactive strength could also be developed through like drop jumps or things like that. I'm good, man. How are you? If a country like Qatar or Bahrain offered you $10 million to take their nationality and run for them, will you take it? If it doesn't affect your American citizenship, yes. So JT, if you have any connections in Qatar and they could pay me $10 million to run for them and I don't have to give up my citizenship, please connect me with them. Yes, I would do that. $10 million sounds pretty nice. I could definitely make use of that. I would probably build a track for all of us to go train at. I've thought about that, like, are there countries that I could run for where I could be their fastest person? It's a funny idea. But speaking of Qatar, there were 2 brothers who were from Qatar, and what were their names? Oh, Tosin Ogunode and his brother. I saw them. I saw them running at NAU at Flagstaff. I think it was Tosin. Well, anyways, dude goes out, runs a. He ran like a 6.5 or 6.6. He ran really fast in the 60, and then hopped right into the 400. Ran like a 45. I was like, or 46 or something. I was like, whoa, dude! Like, he was the most shredded athlete I've ever seen. So speaking of Qatar. Let's see. My PR for the 100 is 10.69. My PR for the 200 is 21.95. The 400 I've only ever run it one time, and it was on an indoor track, and I ran 50.08. But I guarantee I could run a faster 400 than that if I trained for it. I went out, and I told my friend to stand at the 200 line and yell out times. And I come by 200. He's like, 21, 22. I was like, oh no. I'm going way too fast in this first 200, and I died at the end. There's a guy from ASU, ran right by me. By the end, I was like leaning back, seeing stars. So I definitely did not run a good 400 as far as planning out that race. No one in India has ever broken 10.2. Yeah, see, I think that's just a matter of, having the right facilities and having the right coaching. The coach from India who I talked to, he seemed like he had a really good, mindset about coaching. But I think that over the next decade, we're going to see a lot more athletes come out of India and surprise people. Like the javelin thrower. Dude, I think his last name's Chopra. That dude launched that javelin. So I think because India is so large, as long as they get the right coaching in there and have access to good facilities, they're going to start producing some good athletes. But it just takes time. It takes time for that information to spread around to different places, for them to have the right facilities, all that. Kyle, I bet you can. I bet you can visualize that feeling. We're similar in that we're much more oriented toward the short sprints, me and Kyle. Coming out of a 2-month hamstring injury, you just have to think of the progression from slower to faster, smaller ranges of motion to larger ranges of motion, shorter distance to longer distance. It's still general progressions. You're just working around an injury. So you use pain, you use tension as a sign that you're progressing too quickly. If you feel tension in your hamstring, cut it back a little bit. Use a shorter range of motion. Don't go as fast. Don't go as long. If you feel good, then you can start opening up more, adding distance, and that sort of thing. So you just got to work from where you are now and progress to the next logical step, not make drastic changes. I started sprinting, I started sprinting when I was like 5 years old, and I would hold on to my dad's shirt, and he would run down the beach, and I would try to keep up with him. So I did some like overspeed training, probably when I was a really little kid. But competitively, I did a little bit in junior high, just like, we had like one meet, no training, you just show up and run. But I didn't start training for the sprints till high school. So when I was maybe 14 years old, 15 years old. Should reactive squats be done from a percentage of a deep squat? Yeah, I like to shorten up the range of motion when I do drop squats because just to target the range of motion that's more relevant to sprinting. Some people don't like that approach, which is totally fine. I think you can be successful with different ways. But just for me, that works for me. If I do a lot of really deep squatting, I get worse at half squats. Some people might get better, but I find I get worse at half squats as far as the reactive nature. So I like to not get too much of a bend in the knee, so that way I can work on generating force quickly from that position. That's just how I approach it. I'm not saying that that's like the way, you know what I mean? So I wouldn't focus too much on pushing back, other than maybe the first like couple steps. Think of striking straight down under you and not trying to push back too far, and that'll allow you to set your foot in the right spot. If you try to push back behind you, eventually your posture is going to start kind of falling forward. You're going to have to kick your leg out in front to catch yourself, and that's just going to continue to be a thing where you try to push behind yourself. You don't get enough vertical force production. You start crashing, you land in front, and it just self-perpetuates. So I would emphasize putting the foot down under you, creating a lot of vertical force. If you produce enough vertical force, it'll allow you to produce horizontal force and not try to push behind you too much. If I personally find that pushing back just doesn't work for me very well. There's some people it does work for, but for me it's better if I just try to strike straight down under me. For speed endurance, I like to start out with 60s, so maybe, a few 60s, and then I work up to 70s, 80s, that sort of thing. And then closer to the season, I'll go into 120s and 150s. How much you do really just depends on what you're capable of. Very early in the off season, I might do a higher volume where I'm running at 95%, but I'm trying to do more reps. But then once I get that under my belt, then I go for really fast sprints over 70 or 80 meters for short speed endurance. Yeah, so the only thing that really changes during sprinting is your posture. You start here when you're accelerating, and then you become upright. But as you attack the ground like this in line with your body, and you rise your posture, the angle of attack doesn't change that much. And when you're driving your leg like this, when your posture's angled in acceleration and you're doing this with your leg, at the moment that you hit the ground, you're still producing a lot of vertical force. Even though your leg is coming back, you're still producing a lot of vertical force because you have to support your body weight. And if you can't support your body weight, you can't push back because you're just going to fall. So we have to strike like this when we're angled forward, and then that allows us to launch out. So I would just focus on that more than anything for now. Yeah, I like to keep my hair short. I had long hair when I was younger, but it kind of irritates me. When it touches my face, it makes me uncomfortable. So I like to have shorter hair. For those higher volume 60s, I might take 3 to 4 minutes of rest and be running at 90 or 95%. But that's just sort of an introductory thing until I feel good to just run fast, and then I go longer rests, maybe 5 or 8 minutes. Oh, how heavy to go? I don't know. I err on the side of not going super, super heavy. So I know that's not a very specific answer, but you can just feel it out. If you unrack the bar and all of a sudden all the alarms are going off in your head, whoa, this is so heavy, probably not the weight you want to use. You want to use a weight where it feels heavy, but you can be very confident in your ability to attack that weight. Sean, in the meantime, I would probably let it chill out for a few days. You could ice it if the pain's bothering you. I don't like to ice too much, but when there is an acute pain, I will use ice just to make sure I don't get a chronic pain situation coming up. Then I would probably be doing leg raises for 8 to 12 reps, things like that, just to get some blood flow in there. You could even go higher reps if you want, but you're probably going to have to modify your training for a while and just stick with things that don't hurt you, while also doing ab and hip flexor work to help build up those areas. If it continues to be a problem, then I would look at technique. Are you crashing forward? Are you having a lot of braking forces when you hit the ground? Is your foot smashing forward into the ground and that's creating a big stress on your hip flexors? Or when you go to slow down, are you smashing your feet into the ground forward to slow down as opposed to just riding that wave of momentum for as long as it carries you? Or are you overextending on the backside and trying to push too much? and that's overstretching your hip flexors and causing you issues, I'd look at that stuff. Noah, you have to consider what type of endurance you're talking about. So speed endurance, yes, definitely. But general endurance, that's going to come more from tempo, just from generally doing a lot of work overall. Your warm-up can improve your endurance just by how many exercises you do. Not saying you have to do a lot of exercises, but general endurance can be built through any number of forms of training. Speed endurance itself, you have to think of what that means. Speed, we hit 40, 50, 60 meters. Younger athletes are going to hit it at like 30 meters. So if you're a young athlete and you hit top speed at 30 meters, then anything beyond that, as long as you're running very fast, is going to be speed endurance. So it depends on how you're thinking about what endurance actually is. Abby Steiner, I don't know. She's just a beast, man. She's got the gluteals to send her over the ground very effectively. She has good technique. She's just a good athlete, Yeah, Carl Lewis talks about hands up, feet down. That's kind of his thing, one of his cues. Another thing, Sean, blood flow restriction training probably wouldn't work well for that. I don't know. That's a tough one, man. You might want to see a physiotherapist just for a little bit of time. I try to avoid too many supplements during the season because you don't know what's tainted and you don't want to get in trouble. Creatine's solid, vitamin D, fish oils. Tyrosine is a good pre-workout because it's not a stimulant, but it will give you the amino acids you need to make neurotransmitters that are stimulatory. If you're feeling fatigued, rhodiola can help. As far as the straight arm action out of the blocks, I would look at, are you forcing it? Are you trying to use your arms too much? Sometimes focusing on the elbow instead of the hand. If you focus on the hand, then you're going to extend the arm. But if you focus on the elbow, then you just drive the elbow and you're not going to extend the elbow as much. Like if you focus on this joint, the movement will happen here. But if you focus on this, the movement will happen here. So I'd be thinking about, maybe some of those things, tuning into your elbow more than your hands. Or are you just pushing too long into the block when you need to be letting the movements continue to happen very rapidly? Keep getting all these notifications for the elections. I'm like, I don't care. Leave me alone. Let's see. See Olympic athletes sometimes run with their arms going side to side. Isn't that bad? Well, you have to think about our body has all these rotations going on. So if my torso is rotating this way and my arm comes across this way, it's just counteracting that rotation. So you have to look at the total end result of the movement, not tune into just one specific thing or one aspect of the movement. If you require a big arm swing side to side to counter torso rotation to stay balanced, then that's what works for you. And that there's a lot of female athletes who have that, and I think it's because they have a different weight distribution in their body compared to men, that they tend to run more side to side because they have a different mass distribution. And that's going to affect the rotations that are going on through the body. So you don't want it to be extreme, but I don't know anybody who runs like this. I have never seen a very fast sprinter whose arm does not at all come toward the midline of the body. If you find one, let me know. But nobody runs like this. So as long as it's not extreme, I wouldn't worry about it. I think people who think that everything has to be perfectly linear just don't quite understand all of those little rotations that are happening in every part of the body as you sprint. And those rotations are countering other rotations that you have to just kind of let it happen. If you have a restriction in movement because of an injury or some muscular issue, then maybe you work on that. All right, so we got to say Michael Norman. Let's see. I'm going to take a look at Michael Norman. Let's see. Try to find a video here. All right, so let's look at his arms. I know you can't see it, but his arms are fairly linear, but there's still a little bit of crossing happening. So I would implore everybody to if you can find a video from straight forward on, you will always have some amount, even if it's only here. I don't think it's ever going to be like this. I don't believe that there's a perfectly linear sprinter out there. Yeah, Kyle, I think you're onto something there. I usually take, during my warm-up sets, I'll take like 1 minute, but if it's heavier, I'll go like anywhere from 3 to 8 minutes. Usually it's about 3 minutes though, in between sets. I would run naturally and then look at yourself in video and see if it looks way off. But if it feels unnatural and like something that you really can't achieve, then I would question, should you do it? Obviously, if you're running like this, I would say you need to change that. But if you're just within the bandwidth of something like this, then you're fine. Alright, I'm probably going to have to hop off of here soon and go get some food. I got to feed myself so I can work out tomorrow. If I'm telling you guys you got to get your nutrition right, then I need to do the same thing. Yeah, you can send me an Instagram video. So I started sprinting in 2006. Yeah, 2006. Maybe sometime I'll run a 400, but man, that's painful for me. That's hard, man. But maybe it would make me a better athlete to try it out, So, thanks for the birthday wishes, and thank you guys for being on here. I really appreciate all of you. Let's see. Real quick, Max, Copenhagen planks help. Making sure I'm not doing too many crouch starts or block starts helps. So mixing up the starting, like some starts doing them standing, some with like jogging into it, that sort of thing. Terry, I get so many spam emails that a lot of the legit emails get like missed just because I'll get a bunch of spam ones from people marketing things to me, and then I'll miss the one that is from someone who's actually legit. So I'll try to look and find that email. But thank you guys, because if it weren't for all you, I wouldn't have anyone to talk to and help out with all this. So I recover quickly because I don't do too much training, but I'm also oftentimes sore when I am training. It's just at this point in my training career, I have a good idea of what soreness is okay to train with and what isn't. So it's not that I feel good all the time. In fact, most of the time I feel less than good, but I just know how to work around the aches and pains of training and how to warm up and those sorts of things. So, but maybe we can do another one of these soon, and or do another thing like where you guys ask questions on Instagram or whatever, and we'll go from there. I do have a Discord channel. If you sign up for my online training, there's a 7-day free trial. You can cancel it before the 7 days is up, but that gives you access to my Discord. So I would prefer that people don't abuse that and just sign up specifically for the Discord, but I allow for that to happen. So if you do sign up for the online training and cancel it before you're charged, I will not kick you out of the Discord. So feel free to check that out. I got links in the description of my videos for that. And yeah, sleeping 9 to 10 hours a day is definitely going to help. So sleeping is key. Also making sure you're not eating a bunch of garbage, like a bunch of processed foods that cause inflammation. All those things play a role. But all right, I'm going to sign off, guys. Thank you very much for being here. Thanks for all the birthday wishes, and I appreciate all of you genuinely. So let's catch up soon. I'm out.